Me and Alex, say my name, Alex. Bring the flame, my neighbors. Love and change, we'll be talking. Make it play, and Alex, keep it real.
Christopher Nolan has not even released The Odyssey yet, and somehow the movie is already surrounded by controversy. And this is not just one small complaint online. There are actually 3 different conversations happening around this movie right now. First, let's talk about the serious one. Nolan's production has been criticized for filming part of The Odyssey in Dakhla, Western Sahara. Western Sahara is a disputed territory controlled mostly by Morocco, and the activists argue that filming a major Hollywood blockbuster there can make the occupation look normal or accepted. The Western Sahara International Film Festival and Sharari supporters criticized the production, saying it risks whitewashing a real political struggle. So the issue is not just, they filmed in a controversial place. The bigger question is, when a major Hollywood movie uses a disputed territory as beautiful backdrop, does that help erase what is happening to the people who live there? That is the part of the controversy that has real-world weight. Now, the second controversy is more entertainment-based, the casting. Christopher Nolan cast Travis Scott as a bard in the film, and people had questions. Some fans felt like Travis Scott was a random choice for a Greek epic, but Nolan explained that the original Odyssey comes from an oral storytelling tradition, and he sees rap as a modern form of that same kind of storytelling. And honestly, that explanation makes sense on paper. A bard was someone who told stories through rhythm, memory, performance, and voice. That is not completely different from what rappers do today. But the debate is, was Travis Scott the right rapper for that role? Some people online feel like if Nolan wanted a modern bard, he could have chosen someone known more for lyrical storytelling. Others think Nolan is making a bold creative choice and people should wait to see the movie before judging it. Then there is the third controversy, the casting and tone of the movie overall. The cast is huge. Matt Damon is playing Odysseus, Tom Holland is playing Telemachus, Anne Hathaway is playing Penelope, Zendaya is reportedly Athena, and Lupita Nyong'o is playing both Helen of Troy and Clemnestra. I messed that up. Nolan confirmed Lupita's dual role, which already makes it clear he is not doing a basic, traditional version of the story. That has led to the usual internet debate. Some people want Greek mythology to look and feel more historically or culturally specific, while others argue that mythology has always been reinterpreted. And that is the big divide with this movie. Some people want the Odyssey to feel ancient, traditional, and mythical. Other people are okay with Nolan making it feel more modern, more accessible, and more like a massive Hollywood event. So the controversy really comes down to this. Is Christopher Nolan modernizing the Odyssey in a bold way? Or is he taking too many creative liberties with one of the most famous stories ever written? And with the Western Sahara issue, the conversation gets even deeper, because now it's not just about casting, accents, or whether Travis Scott belongs in a Greek epic. It's about whether a major filmmaker has responsibility to think about the politics of the places he uses to create his art. So by the time The Odyssey hits theaters, people are not just going to be asking, is this movie good? They're going to be asking, did Nolan pull off a masterpiece, or did the controversy overshadow the movie before it even came out? And that is what makes this rollout so interesting, because Christopher Nolan is one of the few directors alive whose name alone can turn a movie into an event. But this time, the event is already bigger than the movie. So the question is, are people overreacting, or does Nolan's Odyssey deserve the backlash? So in regards to the Odyssey, I think that the controversy is trivial. I think people are mad. Really, this is where America's racism rears its ugly head. This is a movie that really could be depicted in any type of way, especially because it's such an old story and we really don't have a real basis for what the characters would look like or be like, you know what I mean? Now, in terms of whitewashing, I do feel like some of that is true, especially when it comes to talking about the Greek and the Roman history or anything that has to pertain to, the Middle East or that area. They don't get culturally accurate people, especially, it's already in English. And so, that makes the Greek mythology already effed up. But then, when they depict people who are from Greece, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's white Anglo-Saxon, you know what I mean? Especially back then, there was a lot going on in Rome and Greece and the mixing of different races, because, Africa was like a hop, skipping away. And so when they get mad about Lapita being, Helen of Troy, why couldn't she be, Helen of Troy? We really don't know what these people look like. All we got is what the history books tell us. And we know back then, a lot of things were done in the image of them. Shit. To this day, we still walk around and act like Jesus is white. You know what I mean? When we know if he was born in that time, he would probably look more Arab than, the white Anglo-Saxon that everybody has grown to love. But, the person who painted it back in the day used, a white person, and that we ran with that and said Jesus is white. You know what I mean? So the worshiping that we're doing is based off of that. But, I think, again, this is racist undertones going on, and that's why this is getting pushed back. Some of it is valid, where they say, oh, they're not getting things that are culturally relevant and stuff like that. I think Christopher Nolan did the best he could with what he had, because it's, it's a movie. At the end of the day, you can't get caught up in semantics, because the movie will never get made at that point. At this point, he's looking at it like, listen, let me tell this story. Let me try to be as diverse as possible with people being in it from different ethnic groups, and it helps with just representation. So I'm glad he's kind of doing it with a modern take, helping with representation and, making something that hopefully will be entertaining. He does a pretty good job of putting together great movies. And that's what we're really in here for, entertainment. Not all of the geopolitical stuff, not all of the, crazy casting things. As long as it's done right, the characters are done right, the story is done right, it should be good to go. You know what I mean? Anything else is just, silliness. The only time I get hung up on, let's say, the race part of it is if, like, you try to take a character that was literally created to be a certain race, and then you say, we're gonna change, like Superman. You know what I mean? Although we could have a black Superman, I prefer it not to be. I'm like, because for all that, we could create our own Superman. We create, I love that we have Black Panther, and that character was made originally to be of our culture. You know what I mean? and that's cool. And so I think when you do it with the basis of the character being made for that, cool. Just don't go switching up things just because you want to pander to a certain culture. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't think that's when it gets a little bit, you're trying too hard. But the Odyssey, I feel like it's an ensemble cast, and it should be able to go, without hitch. You know what I mean? So that's food for thought. You do the dishes, and please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am Ian Alex, and please support me, help me build my platform, and I'll keep trying to come with this every day. It's fun.